Hey everyone, Ryan here
And this is Don.
from Rydon Asset Management. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about choosing a property manager and what you should look for when you're hiring a third-party property manager at any of your apartment buildings and multifamily complexes. So we're going to get right into it now. Okay, what we're going to go over today is what is a third-party property manager, why you need to get a good one, a really good one, the first steps to finding your PM, vetting out your potential PMs, and finally hiring your top choice. So there's a lot of little details that we're going to go into with each bullet point, and hopefully these will be really helpful for you. For certain people, it might be a review, but I think we've got a lot of tips in here that'll help just about anybody. So what is a third-party property manager? A third-party property manager is a professional company that's hired by the ownership entity that oversees day-to-day operations. And the ownership entity is going to be comprised of your GP side of things if you're on a syndication, or just the entire group of people in a joint venture. So it depends how you're structuring it, but it's that whole group that owns the property. It's comprised of asset managers, capital raisers, key principals, etc. The PM is local to the property and functions as the boots on the ground. And depending on how you're structured, they might not be your only boots on the ground. You might have a boots on the ground person in your team, but your third party PM should be local to the property. Even if their headquarters aren't local, you need somebody that's local. They are a company that has systems in place for managing this specific asset class. So like I said, in this case, we're going to talk mostly about apartment buildings, multifamily, but you're going to find PMs that are specific for office buildings, storage, retail, medical office, etc. They are your main contact between the tenant and the asset manager and the ownership group. So as property owners, we're not the ones that are actually, knocking on doors, collecting rent, fixing things that break, things like that. This is your property manager that's doing all of that. So they are kind of that in between, and they are really a super valuable part of your team. Why you need a great property manager. And at the bottom, you'll see Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a book a lot of us have read that are in this space. So he agrees, as I think everybody will, great property manager is key to your success in real estate. As the ownership or asset management group, you need someone that's nearby the property that you can rely on and trust. So as I said earlier, they are your boots on the ground contact. Maybe they're part of your boots on the ground. Maybe you have a trusted tenant in place that's lived there for a very long time. Maybe you have somebody on your management or ownership team that also lives in the neighborhood or close to the property. But these people need to be somebody that you can rely on and trust, because they are the ones that are really managing your tenants and managing your property. They screen your tenants, which are your best or your worst partners. So you need to make sure that they are screening tenants to make sure that your tenants are your best partners. Your tenants are, they're living in your property. They need a good place to live. And in return, as you give them a nice place to live, they need to pay you rent. If they're not screening tenants properly, then you might not get tenants that are willing to pay on time or pay at all. And then you're going to get into a rough situation. The PM works with contractors to keep your property in good shape. So your PM should be the one that's talking to contractors, getting quotes, letting your contractor in when they need to get work done on the interior of the property, kind of taking pictures of work after the contractor does the job, things like that. They also turn the units to bring in new great paying tenants. So not only do they do like capital expenditures, big projects, landscaping, things like that, but they're also making sure that your turns, so your renovations or cleaning of units after somebody leaves, are done well and quickly. And a great property manager will save you a lot of time, money, and frustration. And I can guarantee you that that is the case, because we've unfortunately had to go through a couple property managers. So we have one property outside of Charlotte where when we purchased the property, it came with a great property who we thought was a great property manager. everything seemed like it was going to go very well during the acquisition. He was able to get us the information that we needed. He was able to work with us. But then when it came down to actually doing the job after we purchased the property, he gave us a lot of good answers, but never actually completed the jobs. So he wasted a lot of our time, which time equals money. And he, gave us a lot of extra frustration going through different things, circling back again and again and again and again. Okay. The property manager's top 5 tasks. And some people could argue that there are other tasks that should be added to this, or maybe in a different order, but this is how I see it. So number 1, rent. And that includes setting the rate, as well as collecting it, pursuing late fees, and adjusting to market. I think that last one is really important, adjusting to market, because your rent is obviously your income. And your income is directly related to how much your property is worth, because real estate, apartment buildings are basically measured using a cap rate.
So you're it's going to take all your income, less all your expenses, and then we're going to have your net operating income. And once you increase that net operating income, we're going to increase the value of the property.
Right. So because you want to increase the value of your property and you also want more cash flow, increasing that rent to market is very important. And we've also had managers that don't want to get to market or want to be just below it because it makes their job easier. Obviously, if you have a cheaper place that's in the same or similar condition as everywhere else, you're going to rent it out quicker. Everybody's looking for a deal. But if you have a property manager that's willing to actually go to market rent or even over market rent, even if you're, vacant for a couple extra days, but if you're in a good market, that could actually be beneficial to you in the long run. When you're locking tenants up for a full year, you want to get as much as you can get, as much as, fair for the property, but also as much as you can get. Next is tenants. So we touched on earlier, sourcing and screening tenants, move-ins and move-outs, evictions when necessary. Unfortunately, it's always going to come up, and handling work orders and emergency repairs. So like I had mentioned, sourcing your tenants, making sure you're screening tenants properly, that's a huge thing because you are bringing these people in for what you expect to be at least a year. So you want to make sure that they are great people, they're going to pay you, and they're going to keep the place in good shape. You want people that are going to make it feel like their own and like they actually care about the property. They're going to help with move-ins, move-outs. So that includes, when people move in, going through a checklist, seeing what kind of condition the place is in, and then move-outs do the same thing, go back through with the tenant, say, okay, there's a hole in the wall here, this happened, this happened, this happened. Evictions, unfortunately, it's just part of it. And then work orders are really important. And your tenants are going to be the ones putting in the work orders, and hopefully not emergency repairs, but eventually they'll come up. And you want to make sure that your PM is going to get these handled quickly and efficiently, and hopefully at a good price for you. So property is next, and handling all general maintenance, turns, and CapEx projects. So all maintenance that comes through work orders, in addition to anything else. Your lender might require certain maintenance, especially at the purchase. Unit turns, so doing full rehabs, and then CapEx projects that could include things like pavement, painting the exteriors of all of the buildings, roofing, all sorts of different big projects. And then contract services like getting different trash collectors, landscaping, pest control, and again, going through quoting a bunch of different companies that are local, finding the best deal, but also the highest quality for that price point. Number 4 is financing and reporting. So your manager is going to be the one that's collecting all of the funds from the property. So that includes rents. It includes like things like pet fees, pet rents. Some people are charging for different types of utilities, like maybe there's a water fee, maybe there's a rub system, anything else. And they're also in charge of all the money that goes out to pay for different maintenance and other things. So you want to make sure that they are able to track that well, keep good detail on everything, and keep it organized, because you want to be able to review these reports and do it easily. and also hand them over to anybody else that might need them. Again, your lender. And when you're going to sell, you want your reporting to be easily accessed by everybody, easily read, because that actually will increase the value of your property, because when things are easy, people are willing to pay more. Supplying reports to the owners. So not only do they have to be easy, but you want to make it so that you can actually get the reports easy. So different property managers are using different softwares, different things like that. They might be able to schedule reports for you to go out automatically on a weekly basis, or maybe you have to pull them yourselves. We'll get into that more in a few minutes. Keeping the asset management team's budget. So going through and actually trying to do their best to stay on track and on budget versus just spending money here and there, not looking at the budget ever. And employees. So if you have smaller properties, you're probably not going to have employees, but if you have larger properties, you might have on-site leasing agents, maintenance people, maybe multiple, maybe just one or two, but these should be your property managers, employees, and you want to make sure that they are doing a good job hiring good employees that care about your property and are willing to do what work is required. The steps to finding a new property manager. And this can be a long process. You don't want to cut corners, because getting a good property manager is very important. If you're replacing one, you probably know exactly why, what they're doing wrong, and what you feel they should be doing better. And that's a good way to kind of drive questions on your interviews that you have with other property managers. So from my experience doing this, the best thing to do is to start with your network. Your network is a huge asset. You want to learn from them. You need to ask questions, find out who they like and dislike in the market in terms of property managers, but this also goes for contractors and anybody else on your team. So if you are, you have somebody in your network, maybe there's somebody that you just met at a group, or maybe you're actually partners with them on a different property and they own something in another city where you're just buying, for instance. They will probably be able to give you some advice on who they're using, if they like that company, or if they don't, or if they've heard good things about another company. If they don't have anything, any information, or even just asking for extra information, it's a good idea to ask those people in your network for other people that might be in their network, and maybe you can ask them some questions through email or a phone call. Next is ask the broker you purchased the asset from, or the person or group that you bought the asset from. So they will typically have a good relationship with one or multiple PMs in the area, and probably be able to tell you who might be best for your property. Next, look online, do basic searches. In addition, I like to read different forums like Bigger Pockets, maybe even ask questions, ask people that are in the area. They'll be able to give you good responses. Okay, next we want to vet out potential property managers. And this is how I've done it in the past. I think it works really well, but you still have to, go through all of the steps. So one is set up a phone call or video call with them and ask questions. And we're going to get into these questions in just a minute. Sometimes it's nice to be on a video call with them to see how they react to certain questions. A lot of times you'll be able to tell, through body language, if they're actually responding truthfully or not. Two, check out any reviews that you might find online, take them with a grain of salt, ask for references, and then call these references. Ask good questions and know that these references might be that property manager's golf or skiing buddy. So don't trust everything they say, but they can usually be a really good help. And we've actually had it where we've asked for a reference, and then these people have given us a lot of great information on other things, like different parts of the market that are good or bad, other contractors to use, all sorts of different things. So that can be very helpful for not only the PM, but for other aspects of your business in that area. And then review your findings with your entire team. Everyone's going to have a different perspective. So it's important that everyone on the team agrees with the decision, and you kind of all go through what you think are the pros and cons to each property manager that you're vetting.
Okay, questions to ask the PM. Questions to ask. We're going to ask some basics here. Experience is the key to anything. There are a lot of moving parts that need to be accounted for. Asking basic questions can weed out some of the competition. Do you have experience managing similar size and quality assets? How many units in the area do you manage? If they don't manage in the area, be very sure there's a solid plan to break into this area and uber competent in their home markets. That's really a tough one. If there's not, there really has to be a super solid plan. If they don't have boots on the ground, it's really important.
Yeah, and I think part of that plan has to be that they're going to get boots on the ground very quickly and train them, get them up to speed for all of their processes too.
Yeah. And how many units do they own? Will these be in direct competition to the properties that we want them to manage for us? Do they have certifications, or are they members of any trade associations? What software do they use? This is super important. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Is there one or multiple points of contact? Oh my gosh, this is really huge. I can tell you one thing. I really like one point of contact, and I don't know if you want to say anything, Rye, but multiple points of contact is very difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree. Having one point of contact that is able to go back to their team and answer any questions that they don't know off the top of their head is a lot easier than us going through multiple different people for different questions. Like if they're separated into CapEx, maintenance, leasing, financing, and you have to ask a specific question to a specific party, it just makes it a little more difficult to keep everything in line.
And you seem to get a runaround a lot of times too. You'll be go email back to a certain person. Oh, I don't take care of that. Call this person. So that's pretty big.
Yeah.
How often can you have a scheduled meeting? So once you purchase a property, you might want a meeting every single week. And that's what we've liked in the past. And then once you get all of your CapEx and yourself and the management team understands how you like to do business, and you get all of your priorities on the same plane, then you might be able to have those meetings less frequent of a call, a Zoom meeting. Either way, it's just really good to talk with the manager on a regular basis. How close is the main contact to the property? Again, this is key. And if it's going to be if this person's too far from the property, or if the management team's too far, they're really not going to want to go out there when they have to, because they're doing a lot of drive time and they're not making money.
Yeah, and that's something we've experienced in the past. You get all the good answers, all the correct answers from them, but when it comes time to actually do the job, they have a difficult time to do it because they have to deal with different contractors and people that are in that area and not where they actually are located.
Questions to ask: fees and cost. The PM is the most important team member and can literally make the difference between a successful or unsuccessful property, and they deserve to be compensated properly. Everybody's in business to make money, and if they're not making money, then they're really not going to want to make money for you. So what's the fee structure? Is it a percentage of your gross scheduled rent, or is it a percentage of your gross collected rent? Typically it's going to be between 4 and 10%. I know that's a big range, but that's depending, is it going to be a 10 unit or a 200 unit building? So it's going to make a difference. There's going to be additional fees. In fact, for leasing, is there a fee to lease out the unit? Sometimes it's going to be zero. Sometimes it'll be a month's rent. You don't know. It all depends on the property manager. And this is why you need to vet them all out. We like to put a spreadsheet together with a checkoff list and go down the list and check all of these items off, so you can compare the property managers you've talked to and you have your information right in front of you. Renewals. Is there a renewal fee? It could be a half a month's rent. It could be zero. Advertising. Some managers charge for advertising. With some management companies, it's built into their software and they'll actually advertise. It'll be automatic through their software. Markups. This is a big one. And I think this seems to be more, I think it's driven geographically. I think it's just like what we do in the business. What can you do in a certain area? What rent can you get? I think that what we found is in certain areas, like our last property that we just purchased, all the managers in that area charge markups. So they're going to charge a percentage on the jobs that they're managing, whether it's maintenance, contractor work, and even sometimes on the landscaper and these other contractors who come in every week. They're managing this, they're watching it for you, they're billing these people, and they want to get paid not only a percentage of the rent, but they also want a percentage of this job. So again, that's going to depend on where you are and what managers you're talking to. And it is based, usually it's on a sliding scale. It may be 5% to 20%, depending on the job. And usually the more costly the job, the smaller the percentage is. Policies and the playbook. When a company can show you a well-documented playbook, you can have a more confident feeling that they're going to be able to do what they say they're going to do. We want to request information on their procedures and policies. These items should be documented clearly, concisely, so we can repeat the same procedure over and over again without having to reinvent the wheel all the time. Should go into all this, the PM should go into all the details of the business, communication with what kind of communication are we going to have being owners in this property? How is the maintenance handled? In all aspects of renting the units.
Yeah, and basically here you just want to see that you can get all of your answers from them before you even hire them, and that they have these procedures and the playbook written out, and they're actually following it now with their current properties and other ownership companies, so that you know that they're going to be doing the same thing for you.
One interesting thing that just came up recently too, that we've vetting different property managers. For instance, certain property managers will send out notices or text messages when tenants are late a couple days. Others might wait 30 days. There's a big difference, and this is why you want to know this up front. It really makes a big difference to your business. Okay, turns and vacancies. These are the questions that we're going to want to look into. Turning units and vacant units are your biggest expense. What does the property manager do to minimize this? On average, how quickly does it get done to turn a unit and then make it rent ready? And then once it's rent ready, how long does it take to get rented or leased out? These are important questions. And the managers, they are going to maybe not give you an exact answer, but it's good to get an idea of what they're looking for, what numbers they're throwing out there, because it does make a big difference if you have a unit that's vacant. If it takes them a month to turn this unit, which is a really long time, and if it takes a month for them to lease it out, which is a really long time, it's a lot of money lost. So you really want to drill down on this and hopefully, obviously, get that way less than that. I just gave a bad scenario right there. Who takes care of the turn? Is it done in-house with their contractors? Is it third party? You just want to know what kind of skilled labor is doing this work. What kind of contractors are doing this work?
You also want to know there who's handling the quotes and the one that's talking to the contractors.
Yes, exactly. How are emergency repairs handled? If there's an emergency, is the manager going to call someone on the team, on the ownership team, to let us know, hey, we had a problem at the property over the weekend? Or are they just going to go over and fix this problem, and maybe you'll hear about it in the future, which is not good. And in reference to an emergency, I mean, a lot of times there will be a certain amount of money that a manager can spend without getting approval. But in some cases, when it's an extreme emergency, if they can't get a hold of you, they might take care of the emergency anyway. But in most cases, they'll reach out and say, hey, look, we had a problem. It's going to cost this much money to fix, and we'd like to get it done immediately. And of course, we want to be able to respond and get somebody's, for instance, their heat fixed or whatever, so that they don't freeze. Where do you advertise your vacant units? This is important. How do you screen tenants? This is huge. Of course, do you do background checks, credit checks? Do you call the employer? Do you call the previous landlord? Do you call the landlord before the landlord, the previous landlord before? I'm sorry about that, but sometimes you don't want to talk to the landlord that the tenant just left from. Maybe you can call the landlord before that, if that was listed, if that person was listed. Do you share this information with the owner? Some managers will, some managers won't. Do you keep a list of qualified tenants for future vacancies? This is really good. A lot of managers say they're going to do this. I don't know. They say they're going to do it, but I don't know if it's going to happen a lot of times. So, okay.
But it makes a big difference if they do, because if they have tenants that see what your turns look like and know how much approximately they're going to cost, and they can just call them up and get them in as soon as, they can call them up and tell them a unit is going to be ready in 2 weeks. Do you want to rent it? And get everything set up prior to, so the day after your unit is done, they can move in.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we're trying to do is, in most cases, we do a similar turnover, so that, like Ryan mentioned, if the tenants have already seen one of the units and they really liked it, the next move out will probably be very similar to that.
Yep. Yeah, similar, meaning like paint colors, repairs to floors, like new LVT, fixtures, all that kind of stuff.
Software and reporting. Asset management data can drive decisions of what we're going to do with cost savings and with ideas and decisions we make at a property. It's very important what type of income and expenses come in, and how do we track that? It's all through the data that we get. What software is being used by the PM? There's Appfolio, which we've used, which I really like. There's Yardi, there's Buildium, there's RealPage, Rently, and of course there's other ones there too. Some people like certain software, some people don't. It all depends, but at least ask the question so you have an idea of what kind of reporting you'll be able to get, and how often will the manager send out these reports. Like Ryan mentioned before, one of our managers actually automatically sends out 6 reports once a week, it's really helpful. Would we have access to the web to see these reports on our own? What reports can be shared? Is it going to be the rent roll, the owner statement, profit and loss, delinquency, work orders? These are the main reports that we'd want to see. Can the tenants pay online? That's important. And are work orders taken online? A lot of times a tenant can log into a portal with the manager and send a work order in without even having to make a phone call. Do you offer direct deposit for the owner distribution? And that's very nice too.
Yeah, it's worth noting that although I always like to ask what software they use, almost definitely they're not going to switch softwares for you, because then they would essentially have to switch for every single property that they are managing. So, if you really like a certain property manager, you're probably going to go with them regardless of which software they use. All of these softwares can pretty much give you the same reports. I mean, everything's really strong nowadays. It's more how easy is it to read and how easy is it to access, I think. So at this point, you want to decide on the right property manager and hire your top choice. Make the final decision. At this point, you've done your research, and hopefully you feel confident that you found everything out that you need to know about multiple property managers in your specific market. So you're going to compare all of the data that you were able to collect, compare your spreadsheets that you have, all your notes, everything like that. And like we said earlier, speak with your entire team to come up with a decision. Because if just one of you thinks one PM is the right one and 2 others or 1 other thinks the other guys are the right one, you need to figure out why there's that difference in opinion, and figure out who's going to work best for you guys. It's difficult to switch property managers. If you can avoid it, you do want to avoid it. But if you feel that you need to do it, it's worth doing it sooner rather than later, just because they are such an integral part of the business and can really make a decision in how much money you're collecting, how much time you're putting into it, and everything else. They really do. They are really a big part of your team when you own apartment buildings.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else?
I think you covered everything, right?
Awesome. Okay. I hope this was helpful to you. If you've never had to hire a third-party property manager before, hopefully this gave you a better idea of what they are, what they do, and what kind of questions you need to ask. If we missed anything, or if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section, and hopefully let us know what else we can do to help. We're hoping to get other people into multifamily real estate because we've figured out after years of doing it that it can make a big difference, and that cash flow that you receive every month or every quarter can really enhance your life after time. So not only that, but you're also giving a nicer property, a nicer apartment to tenants, which is also, you're doing things for you and for somebody else, which is always nice. So, let us know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, thanks for watching.